Here's the deal. I absolutely do not want to do 5 headlines from that Cádiz loss. A 1-0 loss to a relegation fighting side at home is about as ugly as it gets. But you came here for 5 headlines from the match, so that's what you'll get. But first, I do want to hope that I'm spreading a little bit of positivity here. I want to reveal our new logo and the banner. You can see that on the page and across all the different barcablog.com, the website, or Twitter, Instagram, wherever you also find, we'll say, the brand, whether it's He's Match Reviews or the podcast, wherever you find our stuff. We've had a full rebranding, so it's a lot of good stuff. So I hope some of our new stuff is a little bit more enjoyable to see. So if you don't want to dwell on the Cádiz match, let me know what you think about our new logo and design down in the comments below. But for everybody else that I know is going to leave me all those nice ideas or their solutions to what happened today, I guess we have to go through it now. It's time for those 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-0 loss to Cádiz at the Camp Nou. One is don't rewrite history. And I know that I'm going to be negative. I promise. It's going to get pretty negative here after that kind of match. But the one little caveat I want to give some positivity to is the fact that I can't let this result, these really ugly 90 minutes, dictate what we know this team is or has been for the last 2.5 months, sans the last week and a half, 2 weeks. The Europa League match was rough. There is nothing to take that back. This match was rough. And the first leg, Eintracht Frankfurt, wasn't great. And Levante, with the exception of the last 10 minutes, also wasn't great. That's 2 weeks of pretty bad matches, and it feels like this team has lost their way. That all that momentum that was built up after 15 games being unbeaten, and while not every one of those matches ran smoothly, still this team was confident and clicking on all cylinders. And now the team we see is a shadow of its former self. Again, that was just 2 weeks ago. So I'm not going to let the recent results dictate or rewrite the history about certain players or guys that I think should be in this team next season because they've been bad for now, 3.5 matches, if you will. I'm going to make sure that I look at both that 15-game unbeaten streak and the moments when things don't look so good to try to evaluate which players belong in this team for the next season when all that hope will return. The part of this season's history that is concerning to me, though, is that stat that this team has conceded first in 14 of Xavi's 30 matches this year. That's not great, and that's regardless of personnel along the back line. Anybody watching that match tonight could tell you that Cádiz got the better chances in this game, from start to finish. And unlike the last few months under Xavi, I never really felt like this team believed, and I think I started to lose a little bit of belief that they could come back in this match. Again, one that they were playing at home. There's only so many comebacks possible in a season, and I feel like Madrid took all those vibes and all that good mojo with their comeback against Sevilla already, so for this Liga match day, it had all dried up. But this Barca team do need to turn it around one more time. They do have that Rayo Vallecano game in hand, if you will, and Rayo Vallecano certainly has had better days themselves, but Cádiz is a match that you had to win. And now, Barca sit on 60 points, tied with Sevilla and Atleti, with Real Betis right behind with 57, and La Real, who they have to play on Thursday, at 55. That sounds like quite the race to me. While Barcelona still are, in theory, in the driver's seat, in second place of those 5 teams, there is still work to be done. But let me finish this compliment sandwich after we had all that bad meat in the middle there. This team is still talented enough, even without their best player in Pedri, even without their best finisher in Ansu Fati, even without their best defender in Gerard Piqué. This team is still good enough to finish top 4, and to finish top 4 comfortably. And they have to find their form, I'd say, basically one more time. One more string of 4 or 5 good results, usually wins, 1 or 2 draws, and that'll be enough to finish top 4. I want to thank OneFootball for sponsoring this video. OneFootball is the app I use to keep myself up to date on all things FC Barcelona, everything I need to know, as well as check on every other team that Alemany could be scouting right now for a big summer transfer window. With a custom-tailored homepage, stay up to date with breaking news, live scores, and even transfer news. While on the go, you can check with matches in live time and watch videos afterwards. Use the link in the description for a free download of OneFootball on Android or iOS to put all of your football in one place. And you'll help out a tiny Barca channel too. Thanks to OneFootball again for sponsoring this video. Now back to the Barca business. Let's pick up the pace for 2 through 5, because 2 is the Europa League hangover. There, as I mentioned about Pedri, plenty of missing faces today. Still no Ansu Fati, no Pedri and Piqué, and as I said, I think that is Barca's best forward, best midfielder, and best defender. But unfortunately, I think today the missing faces that were more prevalent, not just on the field, but in the stadium, were all those fans that decided to protest the game. Now, whether or not you agree or disagree, whether they should have protested the team in the way that they did to have their voices be heard, I think that's a little bit of nuance that is more suitable, I think, maybe for the podcast, or maybe I'll skip that debate altogether. But what's clear is that this team, for the second straight game, did feel the effects of what a lack of support felt at that stadium. Like the worst of time, the situation against Eintracht Frankfurt meant that somebody needed to be blamed. And I saw that there was a segment of the fan base that has placed the blame at Laporta's feet and protested today to show their displeasure. The empty goal Nord section was uncomfortable, to say the least. And I think the team's performance ebbed and flowed with the crowd at the Camp Nou, for better or worse. They played poorly during the whistles, played better when they heard cheers, and whether your fans love you or hate you, you have to perform well. The Europa League debacle has to be handled by people in suits. And the players cannot be affected by whether they're hearing jeers or not. And for the second straight match, I think Dembélé is not to say that he's the most mentally strong of all of them, but he seems to be the one who is least bothered, and maybe because he's heard the most whistles and jeers at his time at FC Barcelona, but he seems to be completely unbothered with the way that things go in the crowd to what happens on the field. Frankie de Jong, on the inverse of that, seems to always be affected by what the fans think of his performances. And he had a really good string of performances there for a while, and I don't want it to all go for naught because they decided not to support him today. In the end, these professionals have to be mentally strong enough to deal with the opinions of the fans, for better or worse. And again, it's not even the opinions of the players themselves. It's the opinions of how they felt their club handled what happened as the team crashed out of the Europa League. So again, this is a story that unfortunately for Barcelona, I wish it would go away in the next week or two, and I think it's going to carry on for maybe weeks or months in the near future. Unfortunately, I think for all Kool-Aids involved. 3 is failed partnership. Eric Garcia, Clement Lenglet, and Marc-Andre ter Stegen all had a part to play in that goal that Cádiz scored. Honestly, for Cádiz, that was like their 4th best opportunity, but it is the one that goes in, so it's the one we have to look at the harshest for the back 3. Ter Stegen maybe could have come off his line, I think that's up to debate, but it goes on Garcia and Lenglet, I think, more so, for either not communicating or not being proactive enough. And ter Stegen, you can lump him in with that communication as well. He has got to make sure that he has that space in front of him commanded. And what was even more frustrating was on the other side of the field, Fali, a former Barca B player that was deemed, I think he was 23 or 24 when he played for Barca B, not good enough to even stick around to be a leader for them. And I guess, yeah, he did want to play in the first division, so good on him. But both he and his partner Hernandez were just solid at the back for Cádiz. They were organized. They were perfect in front of Ledesma when they needed to be. There was a little bit of gamesmanship as well, but they were everything that Garcia and Lenglet should have been. The Barca duo hasn't had many reps together, but they should be better. And maybe they won't be. And maybe that's why Christensen will come in and be the answer. And now maybe, I don't know about this match being the one thing that's going to have Barca looking at another center back, but this could be a situation where it depends on what Xavi does think of Garcia in the long run, on whether or not they want to look to bring in another center back off that free agent transfer pile. And I don't mean to heap on Lenglet. He was 4 for 5 in his long balls. He was accurate in opening lines up, but he made a mistake when the team wasn't playing well enough for him to make a mistake. And it's also not a defense of Lenglet to say that Busquets, Gavi, and Frankie de Jong certainly could have done much better in front of Garcia, Lenglet, and ter Stegen on the evening. And that works both ways for the midfield. 4 is each passing week. In each passing week, it becomes more apparent that FC Barcelona should probably just cut their losses, and I don't know where their line was. I don't know how close they are in negotiations, but if there is a dialogue with Ousmane Dembele's team and he is not signed for another team, they should probably reconsider where their line is. I'm not saying that they need to go overboard, and I think they do still need to keep him within some kind of salary structure. But looking at Haaland potentially going to Man City and Mbappe probably either staying with PSG or going to Real Madrid, and those are the only 2 options, what other big fish is Barca really going to try to make a big splash for this summer? And even looking into the future, yeah, you don't know, because there are players out there that are worth big money. I've mentioned Tchouaméni from Monaco many, many times, though this club probably needs to be reinforced more at the fullback spot, the center defense we talked about, and some kind of magnanimous forward as a number 9 up top. Those are the positions of need, if you will, more so than the midfield. But as I've also mentioned many, many times before, what are you going to do about Busquets in the next year or 2 or 3 years? That'll continue to be the problem. And so Barcelona, if they lose out on Haaland, where that money is going to go, it might just go into continuing to renew who they even have. I know people could get frustrated when they say Sergio Roberto renew in the near future. I mean, he might not as well, but I think for Gavi and Araujo, those had to be done. And Dembélé, even when this form has dipped, has still been good enough to deserve another conversation and a different negotiation from when they began this negotiation. And you saw against Cádiz today, Espino had no shot. against Dembele. And so Barcelona dipped him into the middle of the field quite a bit and let him be a central playmaker in ways that he usually isn't. But with Pedri out, Barcelona needed something. And Dembele, he had some rough passes tonight, but again, the responsibility that was on him to decide this match, it really was truly just Dembele. He brings the best out of Dest as well, and I think the club has to once more ask that question, is Dembele somebody that we have to figure out a way to keep at this club? Or is that bridge already burned, and is that ship already sailed? 5 is always Ledesma. I've been doing these podcasts and match reviews long enough to tell you that, unfortunately for Barcelona, Jeremias Ledesma is a problem for them. Last season, especially, those 4 points that Cádiz took off Barcelona, Ledesma deserves 3.7 of them, if you will, and I'm going to give him a lot of the credit for the 3 points that Cádiz wound up winning at the Camp Nou again today. He didn't have as much to do as he did last season, but he was still perfect whenever he needed to be. Dembele's long-range shot, Luke de Jong's header, Aubameyang's volley, Ledesma was there every time. During the first half, I really could have just called this one Rusty Memphis because Memphis Depay was clearly a bit rusty. He hasn't played much with Ferran Torres and it showed. Their timing was way off. Even with the midfield, he would drop when Frankie would push, he would check to Busquets but not far enough, and Busi would leave it short. It just wasn't working. And that's not to say Aubameyang would have been much better in the start. It was Memphis' turn, it was time for him to start again after a few months, and I'm hoping that he is much better on Thursday. And speaking of Thursday, I guess that's the good news. There isn't too much time to dwell on this one. Barca have about, 48 hours to lick their wounds, and then they got to get right back at it again. Barca have wilted in their momentum since what happened against Eintracht Frankfurt, and they have got to get it back to finish top 4, and comfortably finish top 4, which is still possible. And as I look forward to next season, regardless of the players that'll be there, I think it'll say a lot about Xavi, how quickly and with what ferocity this team can bounce back. This is really that first time, I guess you'd have to say, because the team was poor, Xavi was building something, he built it, and now this is that first valley that Xavi's going to have to overcome and come back from. Where can he bring this team back to? I'm not sure if this team is capable of being that 4-0 banging inside that they were for 6 or 7 matches just last month, but I think this team is good enough to figure some form out again, enough to get results. 3 points is really all that matters here down the stretch. There's no other competition to worry about. Get the 3 points against Spanish foes and just finish this season strong. And that'll say a lot about Xavi, the way he handles that. And hopefully they do bounce back on Thursday already against La Real. We've got a podcast before that, and so we'll see you soon. And until then, Forza Barca.